Hey guys, welcome to another preview season for the newest Magic the Gathering set, Dominaria. We are going to be going through all the cards as they are previewed every day. Today is day 1. I'm really excited about this set. I do know that we have got most of the cards were spoiled through the past leak that we talked about a couple weeks ago on the Mana Drain. But we are going to still go through the cards as they were released, the way that Wizards intended it. And then at the end of the actual series, we'll get you a couple extra videos to help you in your pre-release, which is April 22nd, or the 21st and 22nd, and then the actual release date for Dominaria is April 27th. So we'll make sure that you got some videos to get you going for your pre-release, removal, good creatures, and maybe some deck archetypes and stuff like that. But without further ado, we will get into the video. We really do appreciate you guys watching. So let's go ahead and hop right in. Now, the Phyrexian Sculptures was actually previewed a few weeks ago, and we've already kind of discussed it at length, the layout of the card, but I still wanted to include it in here. We did get another Saga card that was previewed as well. So let's go through Phyrexian Scriptures first. It's 2 black, 2 generic for a enchantment saga. And in the new saga cards, this is a new type of enchantment. This is going to, it's a permanent, so that when you cast it, when it enters the battlefield, and after your draw step, you add a lore counter, and then you sacrifice the enchantment after the third lore counter has been added. So this enters the battlefield and gets a lore counter, and you immediately put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. That creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types, which is important, and you'll see why. So then at the next lore counter, so after your next draw step, you will go ahead and destroy all all non-artifact creatures. So this is not a May ability. It will happen on your next draw step, or after your next draw step. And I think the way they are wording the way they word this is a little strange. So it's at the beginning of your first main phase is when this happens. So you'll go untap, upkeep, draw. Main phase begins. This happens. Let's see here. So then after your second draw step, after this has been in play, you'll add the third lore counter, and that will exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards, and then it'll sacrifice itself. We talked about this on the Mana Drain podcast. This is, it's a great removal spell. It's a great catch-all. It is mythic rare, so you're not going to be pulling a lot of these in the in your sealed and drafts and all that. But it is a great card to kind of stabilize the board. At the 4-drop, I don't know if you'll be playing this on the 4-drop. It just depends on what the battlefield looks like. It is nice that even though it destroys all non-artifact creatures, that includes yours, it does not exile all your cards from your graveyard, just your opponent. So that is a piece of information that is very important. And then we have the Flame of Keld. This is the same thing. This is an enchantment saga. It's at the uncommon level. I believe that's uncommon. I think that's uncommon, yeah. It looks like you are going to be paying 1 red, 1 generic for this. When it enters the battlefield, you discard your hand, so that's not that great. Then after you draw your second on your second turn, you'll draw 2 cards. And then on your third turn, this has been out. If a red source you control would deal a permanent or a player this turn, will deal damage to a permanent or a player this turn. It deals that much damage +2 to that permanent or player instead. So an additional burn spell. Obviously, you're not going to play this on turn 2 to discard your hand unless it's dire situation. I don't know why you would, but yeah, this will give you an opportunity to kind of refill your hand a little bit with the 2 extra cards. So I see this coming down on like turn 4, turn 5, at the very latest. But being able to ramp yourself back up. Obviously, you can play this. Your second main phase, and after you've attacked and all that stuff and got everything out of your hand that you wanted to, and play this as your absolute last spell. So Overall, I'm kind of excited to play with these enchantments. I don't like the layout per se, but I do like the fact that they are a new type of card. There's going to be a whole bunch of new interactions in the older formats as well as in standard. There's a whole bunch of ways to mess with counters and adding counters and removing counters and stopping counters, in standard and in modern. But these are going to be a lot of fun to play with. So next up we have white. We've got our first legendary sorcery spell. So this is a new type of spell. This is Urza's Ruinous Blast. It's 1 white and 4 generic for a rare. We'll talk about the legendary sorcery a bit here in just a second, but what it's going to do is, as it says, exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. So this is kind of like a massive board wipe for non-legendary creatures. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of legendary creatures in this set. There's even some permanents, enchantments that make creatures legendary. So, for those in particular, this is kind of a catch-all for the non-legendary creatures. It's a little bit on the expensive side. However, the legendary section of this, and this is where I kind of take issue with this card type because of what it does. So legendary sorcery is brand new, right? This is the first set that it's ever been brought up or ever been created, or at least released. And what a legendary sorcery is you may cast a legendary sorcery only if you control a legendary creature or a planeswalker. So the interaction here is a little strange because you've got legendary creatures that don't have this clause, right? So when you're trying to explain this to a new player, that's it says legendary sorcery, like, oh, you can't play that unless you have a legendary creature. And then it's like, oh, well, can I play the legendary creature? Well, you have to have another legendary thing. Like, this is the only legendary card type that cares about other card types that are on the battlefield, which is extremely frustrating. I wish there was another way for them to do this. I feel like these things could have been, I don't know about more expensive, because 5 mana for a semi-board wipe is already kind of expensive, but the legendary clause really just kind of makes that, I think they're more going for like flavor wins. These are legendary spells that were cast by legendary planeswalkers and creatures of that time, and like characters of that in that plane. So I can understand where it's coming from. I just don't like that they didn't just give it a new name. Like, I don't know off the top of my head really what I'm looking for, but keeping it as a legendary sorcery is just kind of like, really? Like, you couldn't made it like sorcery dash, kind of like the arcane spells from Kamigawa, right? Those were like, those were interesting because those were a type of sorcery. They weren't renaming sorcery spells. So I kind of take issue with it, but, it is what it is. Next up, we have Sarah's Disciple. This is a 1 generic mana and 1 white for a 1/1 flying first striker, that's not too shabby. Flying first strike is great on your sealed decks. This is at common level, so you're going to get a few of these. And whenever you cast a historic spell, Sarah's Disciple gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And then it has this weird clause again. This is the weirdness that it is Dominaria, that artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are all historic. So now we're making references to cards that don't have abilities. Why did we have to put historic? Like, I know this is a historic set. I understand that, but wouldn't it have been better just to put on there, whenever you cast an artifact, a legendary creature or planeswalker, and or a saga, Sarah's Disciple gets +1/+1. I just don't understand why that's a thing. I don't understand. I don't get it, Wizards. Anyway, it's a decent card nevertheless. You'll play it when you get them. Flying is always an added bonus if you can bump this thing up with a pump spell out of green or give it an aura. I know it's 2 for 1ing when you get the removal spell hits you, but this is a great ability. The only downfall is artifacts and legendaries don't. I mean, you can have a legendary creature. Although I wonder, it says legendaries. I wonder if legendary sorcery would work. I don't know. I guess I'm assuming so. It says legendaries. Yes, it's plural, like legendaries. I'm assuming so. We're gonna go assuming so. Next up, we have Knight of the Grace, and this is a callback to some of an older set, or not the older cards with Dark Knight or Black Knight and White Knight. This is a 2/2 for 1 white and 1 generic. It's a human knight. At uncommon level, it has first strike, and then it has hexproof from black. So again, we're not saying it's protection from black because it can't, it can still be blocked by black creatures. It can still take damage from black creatures, but it can't be targeted by black spells or abilities, which is strange. But it does get +1/+0 as long as any player controls a black permanent. Now, the nice thing about that is it's any player. So it could be you could be running, a black-white knight deck or a black-white vampire deck. For standard players, this is a really strong card. Especially in sealed and draft, you'll play if you're in white. This is a great card to pick up early. To kind of build a deck. If you're not in any color specifically, this might actually push you towards that color. Just being able to have an early 3/2 with first strike is really good. It'll always trade up. If you get lucky and you're playing against a black mage, then you'll even better. So next up, we have some kicker creatures and spells. We got Academy Drake, which is a 2/2 Drake that costs 1 blue and 2 generic. It's got Kicker 4. So Kicker, for those of you that haven't been around, this was the original pump ability, and there was multiple spin-offs, and they've brought it back for Dominaria. You can pay an additional 4 when you cast the spell. So you can pay the 3 mana, 1 blue and 2 generic, and then 4 additional generic of anything. And it gains an ability. So it's got flying already. So at its base, it's a 3 mana 2/2 flyer, which is not too bad. But if it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So you're paying 7 mana for a 4/4 flyer. It's not too bad. It's nice in sealed and draft because it'll give you an extra mana sink late game. So a 4/4 flyer, on turn 6, turn 7 will definitely, apply some pressure in that final, couple shots into your opponent versus a 2/2. And then early game, turn 3 a 2/2 isn't too bad with flying. It's not the most hated thing in the world. Next up, we have Keldon Overseer. This is a 3/1 human warrior that costs 1 red and 2 generic. It also has Kicker 4, but it is 3 generic, 1 red for its kicker. So again, you're paying the 7 mana. It has haste, and then when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, meaning you paid the extra 4 mana, you gain control of target creature until end of turn. You untap that creature, and it gains haste until end of turn. It's not too bad. It's definitely worse than the Drake on the early game. 1 toughness is kind of rough because it dies to just about any type of removal spell. But it does have haste, which is a nice thing. So if you can clear out the way on turn 2 and they don't have a turn 3 drop, you can play this and hit them for 3 damage. There's worse things you can do on turn 3. But this is nowhere. It doesn't have the evasion and tactics and the late game tactics that, or the early game tactics that the Drake had. Obviously, late game, being able to play a 3/1 and then steal one of their things is kind of an interesting concept. It's not as good as not as versatile as the Drake. Let's see here. Sapperling Migration. This is a 1 generic green sorcery with Kicker 4. 4 generic, that is. Create 2 1/1 green sapperling creature tokens. If the spell was kicked, create 4 of those tokens instead. So you're paying 6 for 4 1/1s. If you're going wide, you're going super wide. So 4 tokens, that's not too bad. 2/1/1s for 2 mana. That's not too bad either. You're not really going to do too much with those 1/1s unless you have like a sack outlet or a sack engine going or something like that. But again, it's a common, so there's worse things you do. Next up, we have our black instant. This also is a kicker. This is Vicious Offering for 1 generic and 1 black. Kicker, sacrifice a creature. So going back to our sapperlings, this wouldn't be too bad. Saccring one of those sapperlings, and target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. If this spell were kicked, that creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. This is a fantastic way to deal with big creatures, indestructible creatures. I'm looking at you, Hazaret, and just finishing off creatures that survive combat, that have combat tricks applied to them, things like that. It's an instant, which makes it great removal. It's at common level, so you're gonna see a lot of it. So this is gonna be a premium removal spell. So you want to make sure you're being cautious of when you're playing this spell, or when you're playing against a black mage. Always assume that they're going to have this in their hand if they have 2 mana open and any creature at that. So next up, we have an artifact creature construct, Guardians of Quelos. It's 5 generic mana for a 4/4, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return another target historic permanent you control to its owner's hand. So you can return artifacts. Again, it says legendaries. So it's got to be a permanent. So you can put a Planeswalker back in your hand. You can put a Saga back in your hand, which is good. Resetting a Saga wouldn't be a bad thing. But resetting Planeswalkers would be good. Maybe this is a great. If there's a 4 mana Planeswalker out there, I'm not really sure. I didn't look at the entire spoiler. Playing that, minusing it, getting the minus ability, then turn 5 dropping this and getting your Planeswalker back. And then having the 4/4 up for defense purposes for when you play the Planeswalker again. Not too shabby. 5 mana for a 4/4 isn't the greatest thing. It's a May ability, so you don't have to worry about. You don't have to do it as far as the returning another target historic permanent. But there could be some value there. It's kind of like late. If you need an extra card, 4/4 body isn't the best. It's not the worst. The toughness is definitely where it's, they could have skimped on that a little bit, but they didn't. So 5 mana to go in any deck, it's not too shabby. So, and it's at common too. So you'll play 1 or 2 of them. I wouldn't play any more than that if you can avoid it. Last up, we have Firesong and Sunspeaker. This is a legendary Minotaur Cleric for a white and red and 4 generic. It's a 4/6. Red, and it's got a couple abilities here. Red instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink, so that's pretty good. Whenever a white instant or sorcery spell causes you to gain life, Fire, Song, and Sunspeaker deal 3 damage to target creature player. So it's interesting that it didn't do like the exact opposite, right? If like the red instant sorcery spells have lifelink, so you're gaining life off the damage you're dealing, and then vice versa. I'm curious why the white instant and sorcery spells that you gain life off of don't deal that exact amount to creature player. I wonder if there was an issue with the phrasing, I guess, or the templating. I don't know. That's strange. Anyway, this is a buy a box promo. This is the only way you'll be able to get this card is in the buy a box promo. So you have to pre-order a box of cards, or if your LGS still has them after pre-release and the release period, you can pick those up. But this is I think Wizards did this a long time ago. However, this is an interesting card. I don't think it'll have much standard play, but I believe it'll be a fun commander card for sure, or kitchen table card for sure. So definitely looking forward to that. So All right, guys. So that is day one for the spoilers for Dominaria. I really appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you subscribe and leave a comment below. Make sure you're sharing the videos. We really do appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow with tomorrow's spoilers. You can check out the Mana Drain podcast. We go live every Monday evening on twitch.tv/72DPI online. You can check us out there. You can also on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/72DPI online has all of our past episodes. We really appreciate the support. Thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you tomorrow.